Hey guys, I'm Dr. Gonzalez and welcome to another video. Today we are discussing the following topics. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and get started. The eyes in context are surrounded by the bones forming the orbit and moved by the extrinsic eye muscles. So the bones forming the orbit will be the frontal bone, zygomatic bone laterally, maxilla inferiorly. We also have the lacrimal medially. Posteriorly, we have the sphenoid bone. And there's also the ethmoid bone and part of the palatine bone, which I cannot mark here, but it's there. A bone that is not located or forming the part of the orbit, it's going to be the nasal bone. Some of the accessory structures of the eye include the eyebrows, a fringe of hair superior to the orbit, which acts as a partial filter. There's also the palpebra, which are the eyelids. So we have an upper eyelid and a lower eyelid. And these eyelids each are composed of an outer layer of skin and inner layer of mucous membrane. There's also the eyelashes. And these are small hairs attached to the distal end of each eyelid, which will help filter particles and sunlight. And lastly, there's the conjunctiva, which is a thin layer of mucous membrane that covers the external exposed surface. In this picture, you can see the eye lateral view or a sagittal section that I draw so that you can imagine where the conjunctiva is on the inside of the eyelids. The extrinsic eye muscles are 6 skeletal muscles that are exterior to the eye, and they insert onto its outer surface or the sclera to provide the eye movement. And so we have, for example, a division between the rectus muscles and the oblique muscles. So we have the superior rectus, and the superior rectus will move the eye up so that you can look up. Then we have the inferior rectus, which will move your eye down so that you can look down. The lateral rectus, which will make your eye move laterally so that you can look to the side. And the medial rectus, which will make your eye look medially. Then we have the superior and inferior oblique muscles, which roll the eye up and down, and they will do the opposite to what their name implies. Hey guys, I'm gonna make a quick stop right now so that you can like this video, because that will really help me with the YouTube algorithm to spread the word to other students and health professionals like yourselves, and also subscribe if you're enjoying this channel and this video. All right, let's continue. The lacrimal apparatus, it's made of the structures that produce and drain the tears. So here in this picture, you can see that the lacrimal apparatus includes the lacrimal glands. It also includes the lacrimal canals or canaliculus. It includes the lacrimal or nasolacrimal sac with the nasolacrimal duct, and there's also these lacrimal punctums. So the lacrimal gland, it's lateral and superior to each eye, and it produces the tears that flow along the eye surface. The 2 lacrimal canals, which extend medially to drain tears into the collecting chamber, called the lacrimal sac. And the nasolacrimal duct that channels the tears from the lacrimal sac into the nasal cavity. So to summarize, the lacrimal apparatus contains the lacrimal glands, the excretory ducts, the lacrimal canaliculi, lacrimal sac, and nasolacrimal duct. The layers of the eye include the fibrous tunic, the vascular tunic, and the retina. In other words, the outermost layer, middle layer, and inner layer. So the sclera and the cornea are both part of the fibrous tunic or outermost layer. For the sclera, this is a layer of tissue that it's white externally, so that's the white part of your eye. And the sclera, it's composed of a bunch of collagen or collagenous fibers. Meanwhile, the cornea is this transparent tissue externally or anterior portion covering the iris and the pupil. Now, the middle layer, which is the choroid, the ciliary body, and the iris, they form part of the middle layer called the vascular tunic. So the iris, it's the color portion of your eye, and it forms the anterior part of the vascular tunic. It is composed of circular smooth muscle that controls the diameter of the pupil, which is the space in the middle, the black opening in the middle, in order to regulate the amount of light entering the eye. In terms of the ciliary body, this is a structure arising at the junction of the cornea and sclera. It consists of ciliary muscle, a circular arrangement of smooth muscle that alters the shape of the attached lens, and ciliary processes, which are folds of tissue extending from the ciliary body towards the lens. And the choroid, which is the posterior part of the vascular tunic, and it lines the interior of the sclera, and it includes pigments that absorb light, and it's highly vascularized, so there's a lot of blood vessels in that layer. Lastly, we got the retina, which is the area where we find the photoreceptors called rods and cones. So the nervous tunic or the retina, it's the innermost layer, and it's on the posterior portion of your eyeball, and it contains the sensory receptors. The photoreceptors include the rod cells, which respond to low levels of light to allow us to perceive shades of gray, black, and white. And meanwhile, the cone cells require brighter light and enable us to see color, which is why I tell my students, cones with color, see with C. Also in this layer, we're going to find the macula lutea, which is a region of the retina that contains only cone cells. The area in its center contains the highest concentration of cone cells, and it's called the fovea centralis. Because of the cone cells, the fovea is the area of highest visual acuity or sharpness in vision. Then there's also the optic disc, which is the area of the retina that marks the exit of the optic nerve, which is this nerve you see right here. And so it lacks photoreceptors and thereby forms the blind spot. The ear, it's an organ that gives us sensory receptors for hearing and equilibrium, and it is divided into three parts. First, we have the outer ear or external ear. Then we have middle ear, and we have the inner or internal ear. The outer ear collects and funnels sound waves, which are converted to mechanical vibrations by the eardrum. And so you can find structures like the auricle, which is an external appendage of the ear, which it's made of elastic cartilage and covered with skin. Also, you can find the outer rim called the helix and another structure called the lobule. Then there's also the external auditory canal, also known as the external acoustic meatus, which contains wax-secreting glands in its wall known as ceruminous glands. And there's also the tympanic membrane, or the eardrum, which is a thin membrane of skin that separates the outer ear and middle ear, and it converts sound waves into mechanical vibrations. The middle ear, it's an air-filled cavity, also known as the tympanic cavity, within the temporal bone that transmits the vibrations from the eardrum into the oval window. And so some of the structures that we're going to find are the auditory ossicles, such as the malleus, incus, and stapes. Right? So these auditory ossicles are 3 small bones that serve to transmit and amplify the vibrations. Then we have also the oval window, which is a small membrane cover opening that separates the middle ear and the inner ear. And then there is the auditory tube, which is this structure right here. It's also known as the Eustachian or pharyngotympanic tube, which is a narrow tube connecting the tympanic cavity and the nasal cavity. But it opens during yawning or swallowing to equalize pressure between the middle ear and the external ear. Lastly, we have the inner ear, which is or consists of a labyrinth or maze embedded within the temporal bone, containing the mechanoreceptors that trigger both hearing and equilibrium, and it is connected to this nerve called the vestibulocochlear nerve. Now, the inner ear contains 3 different parts. We have the semicircular canals, which are 3 large loops. These loops are anterior, lateral, and posterior. And so these loops are or have sensory receptors involved with equilibrium. These receptors are hair cells within the structures known as a crista or ampullaris. And each crista consists of hair cells and supporting cells that are covered by a gelatinous structure called the cupula. Then there is the vestibule, which is the middle of the 3 inner ear chambers. And in the vestibule, we can find the utricle, which is the posterior chamber, and the saccule, which is the anterior chamber. Both chambers contain a macula, which houses the sensory receptors that respond to head position and gravity to help you distinguish from up from down and changes in speed. And they also have these otoliths, which are mineral crystals inside this structure. And lastly, we got the cochlea, which is the anterior chamber of the inner ear. And this kind of like resembles a spiral snail shell or something like that. And it encloses the cochlear duct, which is connected to the saccule and houses sensory receptors for hearing. So the cochlea or the snail, it's for hearing. And there are going to be receptors called hair cells within the organ of Corti. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to know more about this system, just click on the card on top of this video or wait at the very end so that you can observe or see the suggested videos. And that is it for today. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to comment on the comment section below. I feel like I said comment a lot, but anyways, you know what to do. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye. And I'm gonna make a quick stop real quickly. To see that are related to, oh, it's me.